Hello and welcome again to my channel, Chris's Caribbean Delights. And today, it's getting to the festive season, to the holiday season, and lots of times you find holiday cakes come up. So today I'm going to share with you a basic recipe, one of the recipes that I use pretty often for a red velvet cake. The red velvet cake, historically, it was just a chocolate cake that was tinted red because of the acidity in the cocoa that they used. But now the cocoa is coming alkalized and it's not acidic anymore. So that this is why we have to add the red coloring, the red food coloring to it to give it that enhanced color. And so with that said, I'll go to the ingredients and I'll show you a wonderful and moist red velvet cake for the holidays. So here are the ingredients for my red velvet cake, my holiday cake. You will need flour, 2.5 cups of flour, one teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder, 2 ounces of red food coloring, 2 eggs, 1 3/4 cup of oil, vegetable oil, any vegetable oil. I'll use some mixed spices. This is mixed baking spices. I use a teaspoon of that. And I also have here buttermilk. I'm using light buttermilk. 1 cup of light buttermilk, some vanilla extract. I'll use a tablespoon of that, 2 cups of sugar, granulated sugar, and I also love to use my nutmegs. So my freshly ground nutmegs, I'll use a 1/2 teaspoon of that just to enhance the flavor, and some vanilla. I did mention vanilla. So that's all we need for this lovely moist red velvet cake for the holidays. So I'll be back once I started to put this together, and we'll be on our way. Yes, guys, as we start the red velvet cake, we'll sift the flour, the baking soda, and the cocoa powder, and the salt. We'll sift those and set it aside, and then we'll start mixing start with beating the eggs, mixing the eggs with the sugar, and to let that let the sugar incorporate with the eggs, and then we'll continue with the other ingredients. So for right now, we'll be sifting the flour and the baking soda and stuff like that, and we'll go from there. So here I have this is the baking soda. All the measurements are going to be in the description box. I think I told you, I mentioned it already, how much the baking soda. I think it's a teaspoon and a half. That's a tablespoon of teaspoon of baking powder, teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of cocoa powder. And this is going to be for the dry. And we're going to sift this, make sure that it all incorporates together. You sift it in here. Simple process of sifting everything together. Make sure there are no lumps. Get all the lumps out of here. Okay, there's some lumps there. If there are any hard lumps, just leave them alone. We don't need them. Okay. So that's to dry. In my mixer, I'm going to add the sugar and the eggs. Okay, 2 eggs, 2 cups of granulated sugar, and we'll find the beater. And here we go. We'll put this attachment on, get it down there, lock, and we'll let this go for until it gets smooth and everything is well mixed together. The egg and the sugar is well mixed together. As when this gets smooth and the sugar is kind of melted, I'll start adding the oil a little bit at a time and mixing and continue the mixing. So for now, I'm going to give this about 1.5 minutes and let it just work itself in, and then I'll start adding the oil. Okay? So we'll be right back. So guys, here's the consistency I'm looking for. It's nice and creamy and smooth. And now I'm going to start adding the oil a little bit at a time. A little bit of oil. So we'll be adding that periodically, and then have it mix and mix that oil in. And then you add another set and you mix that in until the oil is done. And then we'll go to the flour. Okay? So that's the concept. now begin the process of adding the flour mixture, which is a mixture of the flour, baking powder, salt. I added the spices in there with cocoa powder, and I sifted it in, so it's all well mixed in. So I add that slowly to the egg mixture, the egg and sugar mixture. And every time I add the flour, I'll alternate with the buttermilk. So it's an alternate. You do flour, buttermilk, flour, buttermilk, flour, ending up with flour. So we'll start that process now. I'll slow this down for a little bit. We don't want a flour. We don't want to spill all over the place. So we'll start by adding one spoon. That's probably a cup. We'll start by let it go slowly, and you alternate with a little bit of buttermilk. Let it pick up for a while and scrape down the edges. Remember, always scrape down the edges. So that everything gets mixed in there. Slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. You do like a third of the flour, a third of the buttermilk. As you can see, the cocoa powder has started to change the color. It's a nice tan color. It's going to get a little darker, and then we'll stir in our vanilla and the food coloring. So I'll continue this process until I'm finished with the flour and the buttermilk, and then we'll stir in our other ingredients. So I've completed the flour and the buttermilk process. Now we'll add our food coloring in there, a little at a time. And you can see it immediately turns red. There's 2 ounces of red food coloring. Has a nice vibrant red here. At this point I'm going to add my vanilla extract. And we're done. We're going to just let this go for a while. We put it on a little higher and let it go for a few minutes, and let everything gets incorporated and get the color seeps in there and gets everything together. So we'll just leave that and let it go for a minute or so, and then we'll be pouring it in our pan, and we'll be done and putting it in the oven. Don't forget, always set your oven to 350. It's going to bake for like 40 minutes. But you preheat your oven. Always preheat your oven to 350. So we're in the oven for 40 minutes. And this is what we looked like when we poured it into the pan. So just out of the oven, and about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, you stick something in it, a toothpick, and it comes out very clean. Comes out clean. So that means it's finished. So you cool. It has to cool in the pan for maybe about 10 minutes before I put it on the rack and let it cool totally. After cooling, I'll be doing the frosting. So that's another section of this video. I'll be doing the frosting for it, and then I'll frost the cake, and you'll see the finished product.